On today's show, all good things must come to an end, and the Bucks go down to the Grizzlies in the second game of the preseason. Still no Giannis, no Dame, no Khris Middleton. We did see Cam Payne for the first time early in this game, but I want to ask Frank some questions about some of the veteran players, Pat Connaughton, Jae Crowder, Beasley as well, and then we'll get to the young guys. We'll see what we can take from this game tonight. The Bucks go down to the Grizzlies in the preseason.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Bucks. My name's Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday and also find my work over at ESPN. Alongside me, the founder of BrewHoop.com and longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden, for today's show that is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that can treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com. That's J-A-S-E medical.com. There, we'll get to that a little bit later on. We thank everyone for making Locked On Bucks your first watch or first listen as the build-up continues to the start of the regular season, and maybe the build-up continues to some of the Bucks superstars getting out on the floor. They're all there in person again in Memphis. The Bucks have quite a break before they play the Lakers on the weekend, but we appreciate the support nonetheless. So if you haven't done so yet, subscribe, turn notifications on, drop a comment, let us know what you took from this second preseason game, and I'll be on there. I look forward to getting involved in the conversation a little bit later on. So thank you for the support there. Frank, 108-102 was the final here, and, you know, Dame looked like he was in warm-ups tonight. He was at the front of the bench. Giannis was at the back, so maybe we're getting a little bit closer to seeing him in action, but for the Bucks, we're going to get to the young guys. I thought we could talk about some of the veteran guys a little bit more tonight because I think naturally we focus on the young players, and I think guys that we figure are going to be immediately in the rotation for this team, whether it's Jae Crowder, Pat Connaughton, Cam Payne, as I mentioned, we saw for the first time, and certainly Malik Beasley, who we have referenced a few times, is not shy when it comes to shooting the ball. Those are the guys that I think are going to be playing every single night. So I think certainly through the first halves of these games, it's worth noting how they're looking. If I asked you about Jae Crowder, what are you seeing here? Because I think he's one of the wild cards for the Bucks.
First off, Kane, I love how, probably everybody's wanting to talk about, MarJon and Andre Jackson Jr. And Kane's just, you know what? Screw you fans. We're talking about Jae Crowder, God damn it. It's kind of funny. I mean, I don't know why. I mean, obviously I've seen Jae Crowder for a long time. I think when he arrived last year, we were so fixated on him being like, oh, can he be, like a newer version of something like what PJ was or what even Wes Matthews was, right? Who I think Wes had something to do with him wanting to come to Milwaukee, the couple of former Marquette guys. And I mean, first off, obviously defensively, we have not seen the level of versatility from Jae Crowder that we saw from both of those other guys who proved that they could defend down and up, in particular on the wing. If Jae was defended like Wes did even the past couple of years at Wes's advanced age, I think we'd all be thrilled with what he can do. Interesting to see him starting as a small forward in these, first couple games. And good to see him, making shots, right? I think certainly, especially in the regular season, I mean, in making shots will paper over some of maybe the shortcomings defensively. I think we talked about a little after the Chicago game. I mean, he was defending DeMar to start that game. We had Malik Beasley defending Zach LaVine. But it's one of those things too. It's like if this was a game that mattered, they would probably be really trying to attack that. Bulls never really try to do that. And again tonight, like I don't know that I have a real read on Jae defensively so far. It was hard to even get that last year after he arrived in Milwaukee. But I mean, the thing that got lost in the disappointing playoff exit was like Jae Crowder shot the ball well. He scored really effectively. Like his numbers were actually very good in the short period that he had in Milwaukee after the trade. And so, again, like he's, tonight, 6 of 11, 14 points, hit a couple threes, 2 for 7 from 3, not like anything to write home about. But that'll do, that'll play. If he's scoring effectively and doing some of the little things and being, a guy that adds some toughness. And again, if he can keep up at all with wings, I think we know that he can probably still do a decent job as a small ball 4, then that obviously opens up more opportunities for him to play. So to me, that's, we've talked about it. That's always going to be the swing thing with Jae. If he's making shots and defending well enough on the wing and showing some versatility defensively, not that he's going to be this hyper switchable stopper guy anymore, then yeah, there's a pathway to him playing. Now, I think, still questions about what role does that leave him in the playoffs when sort of the competition is at its highest level. But certainly the lack of, defensive wing depth, certainly I think plays to Jae Crowder's benefit. And I think it seems like he's going to get ample opportunity to show that he can find a role on this team. And obviously role was the problem last year. That's what he voiced after the playoffs and sort of that embarrassing end to his season. And Mike Budenholzer's gone, fresh start with Adrian Griffin. And, I think you cross your fingers that it translates into improved play. But again, look at the regular season numbers. He was not bad at all. He was actually pretty good in that short period last year too. So if he just keeps doing that stuff, but then gets, again, maybe he says he's lost some weight, even though he's listed at 251. So if he can put up some of the offensive numbers that we saw in that short period last year and improve on defense, then I think you'll be happy with what he's giving you, especially at a minimum contract.
So that's why I think it was interesting to chat about him a little bit, is because we haven't really known what to expect. But remember last year, even when Joe Ingles came back and played, and we're like, Joe Ingles is defending a lot of guys on the perimeter, and this is not really what we expected. But if you look positionally, the way, if Jae Crowder is going to play with the best players in the Bucks, you're going to have Middleton out there, who's obviously a bigger wing. Giannis spends a lot of minutes at the 4 as a 7-footer. And you got Brook Lopez. It's going to be bigger lineups. And then he might be asked to defend on the perimeter a little bit. And that's why I know you've referenced the weightlifting is fascinating. But tonight he started the game more on the perimeter, sort of switching on to Payne a little bit. But then in the second half, he was probably more the 4 because it was just Bobby Portis and Brook Lopez sat. So I think positionally it's going to be interesting to watch Jae Crowder. And before we get on to the younger guys, for the Bucks, realistically, a healthy Pat Connaughton is going to make a difference for this team. He just wasn't even playing at this time last year, and it just didn't feel like he was ever able to catch up. And there was a couple of times tonight where he comes off those handoffs and he knocks down those threes. He got fouled on a 4-point play there. He was able to drive to the basket and throw down a one-handed dunk. So I know for some reason he seems to be a guy that's been maligned. I know he didn't have a great season last year, but you still suspect he's going to be a pretty damn important player for this team. He looks pretty good to start the preseason, and oftentimes, certainly in the past, he's been a guy that has been in closing lineups. And I know you've pointed it out a few times, but he probably makes more sense starting than Malik Beasley if he's healthy, based on what we've seen over the last few years.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the discussion of who the Bucks starting shooting guard is I keep going back to what our friend and co-host Justin Garcia said at our live pod back in late June when asked about the starting shooting guard at the time. Obviously, Grayson Allen was the incumbent starter at shooting guard, but Justin said he didn't think that the guy that is going to be starting in the playoffs for the Milwaukee Bucks at the 2, he didn't think that guy was on the roster yet. And
he also didn't make the prediction that the Bucks were going to trade for Lillard. So what does Justin know? I mean, that should have been a pretty obvious prediction to make.
I mean, at least with the live pod, he didn't say that they were not going to trade for Damian Lillard.
That's true.
I don't think any of us technically said that because we weren't even thinking about that. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Like, if they want to start Malik Beasley, I mean, credit to him. Like, he's really trying. He's got some physical limitations. You obviously don't want him having to fend up against bigger players because he's just not very big at 6'4", 6'7" wingspan. But he's trying. we'll see. If they start the year giving him a shot, as we've discussed, I would still be surprised that Pat Connaughton isn't closing a lot of games when all is said and done. So even if he's not starting, and certainly, I mean, we saw it again tonight. I mean, he didn't have a great shooting night tonight. He took 10 threes in 22 minutes, I think. So the 3-point volume, somebody had to take shots tonight, and Malik Beasley raised his hand and said, I got it. I'll take shots. And he hit a couple again, sort of off the dribble threes. So that, again, there is sort of a bit of dynamism to his shooting. So, I don't think he's going to be able to get off 10 threes per 36 necessarily. If he was just playing with the starters. With bench units, I think it may be easier just to get the ball enough. But I mean, he's commented like it's easy with the starting group. That when they've practiced, this kind of hints maybe that he's been in sort of the starting group with the scrimmages too, because he's talked about how when he's playing with Damian Giannis, like he just gets open looks all the time. So I'm sure he won't mind that. And again, if they want to start that way, again, I think Grayson was a really solid defender the past couple of years. Perhaps Beasley can get to that level, but again, his wingspan may be a couple inches longer than Grayson Allen, but I don't think he's, I don't think Malik Beasley is, fundamentally changing the defensive ceiling of the shooting guard position for the Bucks, even on his best day relative to Grayson Allen. So yeah, I mean, again, at this point, it's like, man, 2 games in, I just want to see Damian Giannis actually play basketball. So at this point, I don't really care who's starting. But if it's going to be Malik Beasley, all right, I'm guessing we're not going to get 82 games of Malik Beasley starting. So maybe there's going to be some different things we're going to see. And again, when all is said and done, do I think the Bucks need to think about that position if they're going to optimize their rotation? They're going for a championship. Yes. But it's early. And so again, I'm not going to freak out about anything at this point. Let's just kind of see what this team looks like. And, again, maybe it's just a matter of saying, all right, we'll just score 130 points every night. And if we give up, a couple more points per game, then we can live with that.
Yeah, 16 threes in 36 minutes so far for Beasley. Pretty high volume. And as you pointed to, the shots are going to be different. That volume won't be at that level once he's playing with the starting group anyway. But I think he's shown enough positives for Bucks fans to at least be a little excited about what his shooting can bring to this Bucks team.
He also, we should also note he got another breakaway tonight off a steal. Hey, yeah, nice to see. And this time he actually threw it on a dunk. It was a little weird. In the game on Sunday, he got like a breakaway after a steal and he just laid it in. And he looked at the bench after he dunked, and it was almost like he might have gotten some shit from them after not dunking on Sunday. So Malik Beasley redeeming himself perhaps in the eyes of his teammates by actually throwing it down in reasonably impressive fashion on the fast break. So shout out to Malik rounding into his midseason dunking form.
All right, let's get to the young guys now, whether it's TyTy Washington, Andre Jackson Jr., MarJon Beauchamp, AJ Green we saw for the first time tonight as well. So we'll talk about the young guys after we talk about Jace Medical, the sponsor of today's podcast. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jace Medical offers the Jace Case. The Jace Case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you peace of mind so that you're not just hoping you have access to medication in an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure you have the medication, and it's simple. They handle everything from online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. So don't get caught unprepared. Get $20 off these life-saving antibiotics today from Jace Medical by using the code LOCKEDON at checkout on jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. All right, we're building towards the regular season on Locked On Bucks. Yesterday, I caught up with Isaac Shade, the Locked On college basketball host here at the network, and he had some thoughts on some of the young guys we're about to talk about. So if you missed that podcast, go back and check it out. If you've missed any of the Lillard content, we've got a billion shows that you can go back and listen to as well. And then we're going to move ahead to the next preseason game against the Lakers. So lots going on. We appreciate the support as we roll through the preseason. But you did hint to it at the start. A lot of Bucks fans tuning into these games, understanding maybe the stars aren't going to be there. So they want to see the young guys. Not that this comparison needs to be made, but we are going to look at these guys and say, well, who are the guys that can crack the minutes in the rotation realistically. There's clearly high hopes for MarJon Beauchamp. There's been a little bit of hype coming out of the team. But, I thought it wasn't a great night for him tonight. He still, and he's young, so it's not even been a critical or overly critical of what he's doing at the moment, but it seems like he just goes through these nights where some nights he looks really assertive and he looks confident and he looks aggressive. Then other nights he just looks completely unsure. And tonight was one of those nights where he looked hesitant and it wasn't his best night. And then Andre Jackson Jr. comes on in the second half and he kind of just looks like a player that's ready to play and cause problems defensively. The athleticism is ridiculous. He had another two-handed dunk in transition, which was completely outrageous. But if you're just looking at these two guys, probably the two higher credentialed young guys that there's hope for, Jackson Jr. has made a pretty nice start and nice early impressions.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. Andre's got kind of that like nuclear athleticism that I don't know. I mean, I didn't necessarily expect MarJon to be that athletic as Andre is, but I think when I have heard people talk about MarJon and his athleticism, I think there was maybe some folks that thought that MarJon was going to pop more athletically. I think MarJon's more of like a smooth athlete than he is necessarily like very explosive. I can think back came to our first podcast about him last year. We call out some of the 2-footed jumping that he was doing, like not looking particularly confident necessarily dunking off 1 foot in transition and things like that. So I think tonight, what stuck out to me was, even when he was being aggressive, like, I mean, how many times did he get his shot blocked tonight, right? It felt like he got blocked like at least 3 times around the basket. And, like he had an angle to finish and, just kind of had to go for a little layup and somebody came over and just swatted it away. I think one of them should have been a goaltend. I think he got it off the backboard and then it got, didn't kind of a non-call, but whatever. I think, what did he start, like 0 for 6 or something like that? He finished 2 of 11, did hit a 3 in the fourth quarter. And then picked up like a dunk off like kind of a, transition muck up and everything. So yeah, I mean, I think MarJon, we talked about it after the last game, we said, hey, great that you put together a nice box score line. Felt like he played in sort of within himself when he had those 18 points, 9 rebounds and 3 assists. And so now it's like, just go and keep doing that. Right. And that was the problem in Vegas is he has 2 really good games and then he has 2 basically no shows. And tonight, I don't think necessarily like the offensive struggles like impacted the way he was defending. He didn't really pop to me negatively or positively. Defensively, I didn't think he did anything particularly wrong. Had a couple steals, deflections. But yeah, I mean, it's hard, in this environment where he's not out there with, the stars. It does kind of put more of an onus on him to create offense. And, again, this is always this question. It's like, well, how much, in summer league or preseason or whatever, like, I mean, what does it mean if MarJon scores some points or doesn't score points or scores effectively or doesn't score effectively? I mean, obviously you want him showing confidence and being able to kind of pop up and attack the basket and make some outside shots. But we know that, when this team is at full health, like he's not really going to be asked to go out and, create shots, right? Like in the final minute of the last 2 games, they've called plays for him to go and get a shot. Don't think that's going to happen much in when the games count and the team is remotely at full health. But, I think Adrian Griffin and the coach staff, they're trying to push him a little bit and sort of see what he's capable of. And, I'd say again, so far, first 2 preseason games, mixed bag, similar to what we saw in Vegas. So I don't really know that there's a lot to be made of it until we see this team actually have some of their key guys back. And, we sort of see how some of these role players actually fit in and complement the guys that are actually going to matter and the guys that are actually going to be, playing when the games really count. But, again, I think for MarJon, just the story is the same. It's like, just need more consistency, man. And, it just feels like sometimes he's kind of putting shots up to put shots up and doesn't necessarily play with the highest level of confidence. So, finished a little better than he started the night, but, especially in these games where the second half is full of kind of like bench warmers and guys that don't usually play, that's not as impressive as, if you're doing it from the jump when you actually do have, the likes of a Jaren Jackson and Desmond Bane playing. Both those guys certainly made their presence felt, especially in the first half.
So I think that's going to be the interesting conversation, because you see a lot of it in the YouTube comments. And as I said, there's a lot of people high on MarJon Beauchamp. But if you're looking at the two guys and you're saying, well, okay, what do you want to see from preseason? I don't think that there's the expectation that Andre Jackson is going to go out and score. Well, there isn't, because he didn't do that in college either. But he already is able to make little things happen. And for Beauchamp, it feels like the expectation is higher than that. So when he is the guy that's playing on the floor with a lot of the reserve guys, it's like, well, he doesn't really look like he doesn't look like some of the other younger players you see around the league that can take over in those moments as a scorer. So if he doesn't have that feel, maybe he'll still be a significantly better role player, playing with the starting guys, as you pointed to. But I think just there's some communication stuff. He seems to be involved. The passes go flying out of bounds. There's a couple of turnovers there. And it's like, it doesn't seem like he's always on the same page with some of these guys as well. So that just means that there would be some teething pains going into the regular season, even if he's playing with the starting guys. And then how much patience is he going to be afforded? I think it's going to be an interesting question with Adrian Griffin, how long the leash is for MarJon Beauchamp as the season rolls on here. There was a couple of other young guys that played tonight. I want to talk about them when we get back. TyTy Washington, AJ Green, and any other thoughts from tonight's game against the Grizzlies after I talk about FanDuel. And you can snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. Win total for the Milwaukee Bucks, it's a 53.5 wins. You can get minus 115 there if you take the over. If you take the under, minus 105. Interesting, I did see ESPN's computer projections at the Bucks at 48.5. That feels pretty low, but we'll see how that pans out throughout the season.
We should say the Kevin Pelton numbers, they have like a mean reversion factor. So like the win totals are always lower than I think people expect. So I don't know that there's a ton to read into that one, but like they've never said that the Bucks are going to win 55. Like they never really project 55 win teams, period. If you're in the low 50s, like that's typically like about as that model tends to get you. But anyway, again, just it's a data point. We'll leave it at that.
You'd be disappointed if the Bucks were under 48.5. We can both agree on that. But back to FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and you can kick off the NFL season. That's FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. So we did see AJ Green for the first time tonight. He only played 12 minutes, knocked down a three. That was probably about the majority of what he did. TyTy Washington was out there mostly in the second half tonight. We thought he was decently impressive with the 7 assists in the first game. I thought he had a couple of nice moments again as a scorer, which is kind of a question mark because the efficiency in smaller minutes last year in the NBA with Houston was down on perhaps where it was projected coming out of college. But he had a nice high finish off the glass. He was able to hit a floater there as well. He did a step back three late in the fourth quarter. So I think it's going to be challenging for him with Cam Payne coming in. You expect that Payne's going to play relatively big minutes through the regular season, even though he had some rust tonight. Was there any other impressions you had on the young guys? I know we've mentioned it before, but one thing I will say, when AJ Green shoots the ball, you feel like it's going to go in at a pretty damn high clip. He's got a pretty specialized NBA skill, that's for damn sure.
Yeah. If when the Bucks are, up 15 and they're like assist hunting for Giannis to get his triple doubles in the fourth quarter, you got to get AJ Green in there. Get that guy's money. Get some free assists. Well, let me say, I didn't really mention, you brought up Andre Jackson, and I talked mainly about Beauchamp in that regard. So, I think the early returns here from Andre Jackson have been positive. I think in the half court, it's hard to see him really kind of making a whole lot of sense other than when he's just, in the dunker spot or, as being kind of a screen and short roller guy. I don't ever want to see him taking, 14-foot floaters and stuff like that, which again, I think he just settles for probably too much. We saw a lot of that in Vegas, but yeah, I mean, he's a totally different player in transition against when the defense hasn't set. And super impressive play tonight on the dunk you mentioned, Euro stepping for a big hammer dunk. And just the unselfishness, I think is also kind of especially obvious in transition. We saw that on Sunday with especially the pass to Giannis, which it's funny. I can't remember if we talked about it, Kane. I don't think we ever talked about it on the pod, but just sort of like there was kind of a rambunctiousness to him that like reminded me of Thanasis. So after I saw the new Indiana Jones movie this summer, and I rewatched all the old Indiana Jones movies, and it got me thinking. I don't know what the joke was there, but thinking about Andre, it got me. For some reason I kept having in my head The Adventures of Young Thanasis was like in my head as the Andre Jackson story. And I'm sure some people would find that an insult, but maybe other people who like Thanasis would find that an insult to Thanasis. I don't know where people come out on that, but there is sort of like a reckless energy and enthusiasm to both of those guys. I think Andre is probably going to be able to much better contain his fouling and defensive energy than probably Thanasis has we've seen over these few years. But it was definitely, I got a kick out of seeing them combining in that game on Sunday. Because it was just cool with both those guys, the energy that they bring. So I don't know. I mean, it was interesting that I don't think we saw Andre until the second half tonight. I think, they definitely were not. If to some extent the rotations are indicative of where guys are in the pecking order, certainly, it doesn't seem like Adrian Griffin's like intending to, play Andre Jackson every night. But we'll see. Again, season is long, injuries happen. I expect at some point we're going to see Andre Jackson get some minutes, and then the question is just like what he can do with them, and whether he can be sufficiently, his shooting and lack of kind of scoring instincts, whether those can kind of be papered over by his kind of passing and IQ on offense, and then obviously more importantly, can he do something on defense that kind of differentiates him a little bit, because that's certainly probably the swing skill in terms of what could earn him minutes. Is if he's actually able to play high level defense without fouling, that would be a big deal, because we don't know who's going to do that on this team right now. So, fun few minutes from Andre Jackson. And then, but I also say this though, but it's kind of like, comparing to like MarJon the other day, it's like, I can't ever picture Andre Jackson scoring 18 points in a basketball game. Like, I don't know what we need to look up what his career high was at UConn. Like, I mean, he averaged 6 points a game in college. MarJon is obviously not a finished product, but went out and scored 18 points in an NBA basketball game on Sunday, preseason or otherwise. And I don't think Andre is going to do that anytime soon. So, again, just something to be kind of thrown out there, and we'll kind of see how those two end up competing against each other to an extent for minutes. As far as other guys, I would say my general comfort level in terms of like non-Damian Lillard Bucks point guards, Cam Payne was 0 for 6 tonight, missed all 4 of his threes, first game playing in quite some time. But honestly, it's just like, I don't know, just something about it. I mean, Cam isn't like, he's not like a big guard or super athletic or anything like that, but he kind of knows how to play, and it just felt like when he was running the offense, like, he knew how to get to a spot and kick it up for an open shooter. And, he just kind of knows how to like play NBA basketball to an extent that, like on the other extreme, like Lindell, I think I just don't know. I just haven't seen a trajectory with Lindell. I think he's had, good moments in summer league. He's had, good moments at times in the preseason, even in some of the garbage time games where he's gotten in. He's been able to put up some numbers at times when he's gotten opportunities, but I just don't feel like, the kind of like the fundamental point guard instincts have really evolved to the point where, I can see him like actually kind of making sense, on an NBA court. So I think Cam has shown why he is an NBA backup point guard. And I'd put TyTy in between those guys. I think he had TyTy, I think he had 7 assists in the first game. Tonight scores 9 points. You mentioned the kind of step back three. Was able to do some things in the scoring column. A couple steals, only 1 assist, 1 turnover in 14 minutes. So again, I don't think TyTy's been jumping off the page. I don't think what we've seen from him is, going to make me feel like, oh man, we got to find a way to get this guy backup point guard minutes, or we shouldn't have signed Cam Payne or something like that. So there's something there, but I think he's, as you were discussing with Isaac, by the way, Isaac in the pod last night, huge TyTy Washington fan. So we've got our friend Sam Vecini, huge Andre Jackson fan, Isaac, huge TyTy Washington fan. So now we just need them to be right about those two guys, and the Bucks, the post Damian Lillard Milwaukee Bucks should be in great shape to surround Giannis with a continuing championship core. But yeah, so solid from TyTy. We'll see. I think he'll probably have to do a lot of his damage with the Herd. And other than that, hey, Khris Livingston makes his debut, kind of finds a loose ball for a dunk early, scores 7 points in 4 minutes, or in 4 shots in 7 minutes. But kind of all of the more like garbage man type variety points. So, again, I think we can safely say Khris Livingston probably not, of all those guys, probably the least likely to get rotation minutes this year. And again, we'll probably be a guy that has to work on his game, and we'll get a better read on what sort of trajectory he's on based on what he does in Oshkosh. But at least nice to get him some minutes and kind of get off the schneid. Although I will say this, like, memo to Bucks young players, look, we know that you're trying to look unselfish and not just hunt your own shots and stuff like that. But when you're out there and it's a bunch of you guys that actually are, roster players or two-way guys, and Marquise, however you pronounce his name, is the Bucks center, you don't have to give him post touches, guys. You don't have to look for Marquise Bolden. Nobody's going to look down on you. Just go for, play your game. And I don't know. I feel like this is one of those things, like young players, they get all deferential. It's like you don't have to pass to Robin Lopez for post-up touches, even though Robin obviously has a pretty devastating hook shot game when he really wants it. But, we don't really need to play that way. So, yeah, guys, just don't worry about getting Marquise Bolden touches. He was 0 for 5 tonight, and there were a couple of those where it's just like, guys, why are we giving him post touches? We don't need to see post touches from this dude. Very few guys get post touches in the NBA these days. Shout out to Marquise. Appreciate what you're doing, but maybe not that part.
Have to agree. It was a really rough few minutes there. Unfortunately, as the Bucks late in the game, a little bit of pressure defense. We're trying to cause some chaos. Adrian Griffin was heavily invested in the game, and the players were all getting a little bit excited as well, which is fun to see because those guys, certainly at the back end of the game, they're trying really hard in preseason, which maybe is not the case in the first half of some of these games. The Bucks play Sunday night against the Lakers, 6 p.m. Central Time, so a bit of a break now before their pack in action, and who knows? It'll be pretty fun if the Bucks play the Lakers and there's a whole bunch of stars playing for at least a quarter or a half. So we'll wait and see what happens on Sunday night. But it is the time of year where we like to overreact or read into things that perhaps won't matter all that much by the time the new year rolls around. So let us know what you thought from the Bucks and the Grizzlies tonight. Milwaukee 1-1 in the preseason, Frank.
My prediction, I think Dame and Giannis play on Sunday. I think, by the way, I was kind of like happy on some level that they didn't play tonight, because it would have been like annoying in a way if they had rested them on Sunday in front of the home fans and then played them, on a Tuesday in Memphis. So now you get an extra few days off. It kind of makes sense, right? Like why, basically you just give them the 2 off and then you can get them a few extra rest days and then
some sun.
Yeah, and then start the preseason in earnest. I don't think Giannis has played more than 3 preseason games in about 5 years, so he can now play the last 3 games and get his customary 3-game warm up in, and hopefully be ready for the regular season. So yeah, Bucks, Lakers, get the hype train going. Lillard, Giannis in Tinseltown. Sign me up. Let's do it.
I'm going full scale for the rest of the week on Locked On Bucks. planning like they're playing. So I'm going to be highly, highly disappointed if it gets around to Sunday and they don't. Anyway, but something to look forward to. But let us know what you thought from this game. Another couple of podcasts to round out the week leading into this Lakers game. So we appreciate the support. We'll catch you all tomorrow.